Hey everyone, Crimson Moon here with another reaction to the Game of Thrones episode, the latest episode last night, Season 8, Episode 5, The Bells, it's called. And this featured the huge final battle between Cersei and Dany, these two armies that have been heading for each other for a long time. Now, I would say so far in Season 8, which I've mentioned in my previous videos, has been overall kind of a disappointing season. It has its moments, but it's been disappointing. I would say this episode, Episode 5, has been the best episode by far of the season. So overall, I think it was a good episode. It was a solid episode. I enjoyed watching it. I think a lot happened that was really cool. So let's start with Dany. We come into this battle, and she just absolutely demolishes everything, right? She kills all of those giant dragon bows that they had and just destroys all of them, wipes out Euron's Iron Fleet, wipes out like all the walls, blows a hole in the wall of the city, allowing her armies to come through. And she's just fierce, she came down with the sun at her back so that it was in everyone's eyes and they couldn't aim at her, and just seemed like it just felt really satisfying. It was really cool to just see her just destroy them, and nothing went wrong for her at the beginning of this battle. So really satisfying. Then, they go in, her army goes in, and Cersei's army finally just surrenders. They throw all their swords down, and then things get crazy, right? The writers, they go all in on Dany becoming the Mad Queen. And suddenly, even though everyone's laid down their arms, the bell's ringing, Dany just starts lighting up everybody and doesn't even go after the soldiers who are all there surrendered. She just starts burning all the people, the women and children, standing there in the streets just waiting to see what will happen. And she doesn't stop. For I don't know how long the episode was, an hour. She just burns the entire city and all the people for an hour. She doesn't stop, just goes and goes and goes, burning everything, knocking down everything. By the end of the episode, nothing is left. And, at the beginning of the episode, she has this interaction with Jon where he doesn't kiss her back, and she decides, all right, no one loves me here. You don't really even love me enough to be with me, so I'm just going to straight up rule by fear because that's all I have. And she really goes for the fear thing, though who's left really for her to rule because she killed like 1 million people. Nah, it wasn't 1 million, but tens of thousands of people, it seems, in this city that she just burns to death. So pretty crazy. Up until this point, she really had been ruling more by love, at least for the people that she was ruling, right? They all loved her. She was always freeing the slaves, speaking up for those in, the downtrodden, the enslaved. She was always kind of this really good character that was freeing people, helping people, and people loved her because she was someone who was working for justice and righteousness in the land, someone that everyone could really look up to. This is a huge turn from that. Now, to me, I would say that the extreme just Mad Queen that we've seen, it feels kind of forced and rushed to me. So I understand that the show has been trying to show something of a gradual process, especially in this season, though this season itself is even condensed, right? It's only 6 total episodes, and we're at episode 5, and she's just completely off the rails. But to me, it still feels kind of out of sync with her character because she had been such a kind and loving person towards people who were innocent in the past. So yes, she'd been really harsh towards people who betray her. She'd been really harsh towards people who enslave others, who take advantage of others, people who are greedy and evil. But she had never treated innocent people this way. And yeah, she even burned some people who wouldn't bend the knee to her. So that's starting to show some of the process of maybe becoming a Mad Queen. But this just feels like a huge jump from anything that we've seen from her before. We've never seen this kind of senseless murder and mass destruction, just giving herself fully to it. So that's my opinion. I don't think that they've made enough of a case to show that she really would become a Mad Queen. I guess they're trying to show that like greed and lust for power and this idea of destiny can corrupt even, the best of us, but I just kind of don't buy it. So it was a really cool episode, and I would buy it if they built up to it more. I'll still, whatever. It is what it is, and I'll go with it. I understand what they're trying to do, but I think that they could have done more work to really help show how this process happened. Doesn't feel consistent with her character. Just as a side note, kind of interesting that Grey Worm also, he followed his queen and he just really gave in too, right? People laid down their arms and then he just spears them, starts this mass, hand-to-hand combat happening on the ground against, at this point, unarmed, surrendered soldiers, and just pissed about Missandei. Him, I can actually understand more than Dany, giving in just the bloodlust, wanting the revenge of them killing, really the only person that he'd ever loved. Okay, so that's that. Then we see, Tyrion. Throughout this, he rats out Varys, who gets killed by Dany, and even at that point, you can see Tyrion's like, I don't really know if I'm doing the right thing or not. I hope that I am. And then a little bit later, he ends up freeing Jaime, trying to avoid some of the bloodshed after the really disappointing conversation that he had with Dany. I think at that point he could sense Dany's just going to kill everyone, and we have to do whatever we can to avoid this bloodshed because there's just no reason for it. And we see that Tyrion also still cares about his family, about Jaime and Cersei, and his future niece or nephew that they'd have. Now, once the battle happens and Dany just lights up everybody, he is just absolutely stunned. And obviously at this point he's like, I have made a huge mistake, right? He should not have ratted out Varys. At this point he's realizing, I should have worked with Varys. Varys was right. We should have gotten rid of Dany, set up Jon for to be the king, and this whole thing could have played out so much better for everybody. So Tyrion, poor guy, in a terrible spot. It'll be interesting to see how his story ends, but there's no way that he's feeling loyal to Dany anymore, though certainly he's probably feeling the fear that she intended, right? Okay, then Jon, Bran and Sam, in a sense, planted a seed that he should be the future king when they told him about his true identity as Aegon Targaryen. Then Varys waters it, right? He meets him out on the beach and he's like, you should be the king. You'd be a much better king. Jon's like, no. But, he stands by and watches Varys gets burned. But then, quite frankly, Dany is putting the nail in her own coffin when she just burns everything. At this point, we see Jon is turning, right? He had to kill one of his own soldiers who's like trying to rape this innocent civilian. And then he calls a retreat from his own queen, who would likely burn all of them in the streets, along with the, enemies and the innocent civilians, the middle people. He's certainly turned against her. She's definitely going to die in the last episode. And I would give it a 50-50 chance that Jon's the one who does the deed. Really, he's the only one who's ever been permitted to even get close to her. So, conceivably, he could get close to her and use that opportunity to kill her and end the madness. Now, who's the other 50-50 shot? It's going to be Arya Stark. And honestly, at this point, well, I don't know if it's going to be her. We'll see. But she gets called off by the Hound from killing Cersei. She could have killed Cersei at the top of her list. And then at one point, she's in the streets, like trying to save people, trying to run, very frantic. Feels like when she was running from the army of the dead, right? And she almost, with all that dust on her and everything, looks like a White Walker herself at this point, which is kind of interesting imagery. But it looks like she gets burned in the streets, and then right at the end, she's actually still alive, and she finds this horse. I wonder if she will be the one to slay not only the Night King, but also the Dragon Queen. Now, my guess is that she'll try to kill the Dragon Queen, but it's not going to work. She's going to die. And then Jon is going to have to be the one to kill the Dragon Queen in the end. So Arya Stark, my guess is that she will die in the last episode, and then the Dragon Queen will die as well. One of the most satisfying things in this episode is that we finally got the Hound versus the Mountain, this epic battle of brothers that we've been looking forward to for a long time. Kind of funny that Qyburn is like, no, listen to the Queen, stay by her side, and the Mountain just kills him. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything now. He just wants to kill his brother and fulfill, what he sees as his destiny and final vengeance against the Hound. And Cersei, Qyburn gets dashed against the rocks, and Cersei's like, I guess I'll be leaving now. And she just kind of, trots down the steps, passes the Mountain, passes the Hound, and just keeps on going. And they don't pay any attention to her because they don't care about her. She's as good as dead anyway. So they're just focused on each other in this battle. And I thought that the battle was excellently done. The Hound ends up in the Mountain's grip, and we get reference to the really most gruesome death in this whole show, in my opinion. The Mountain takes the Hound and starts to crush his eyes and skull, just like we saw, in that battle a couple seasons ago, right? The battle that turned the Mountain into this like freak of nature, Frankenstein type of character. Then, fittingly, the Hound pushes the Mountain through the wall, and they fall to their death into the flames. The thing that the Hound is most afraid of. He gives himself to the flames, and in a final suicidal, self-sacrificial battle, kills himself and this freak of nature Mountain. I thought that was just a really well done scene. Now, talk about something that I think was not well done. Let's talk about Jaime and Cersei for a second. Euron Greyjoy, just kind of comes out of the water because somehow he's still alive again after his entire fleet is destroyed, and we get this battle between Jaime and Euron, which quite frankly I just don't care about that. Like, it didn't make any sense. Euron has not been somebody that I really care about. He's like a secondary character the way that the show has handled him, and it just felt weird. Like, he is the one who gets to stab Jaime, these mortal blows. Just kind of weird. I'm glad, I guess, that Jaime killed him, and in some sense, I guess the writers probably see this as some sort of full circle narrative for Jaime, where, back in the day, he was the King Slayer, and now, in a sense, he slayed another king on the beach before he dies, but just kind of, don't care about this. This battle's not the one I want to see. So glad, though, that he didn't just die there. He makes it to Cersei eventually. Now, some people say that maybe Jaime is the one who actually rang the bells of surrender. We do see Jaime kind of running through the streets, and we're not really sure what he's doing. We don't actually see, so I don't know. Again, 50-50. Maybe he rang the bells. I don't know that we saw enough to say that he did ring the bells personally, but maybe he did, and he was, carrying out Tyrion's plan. I don't know. At any rate, he does make it to Cersei. Now, here I'm really surprised. There were a couple moments where I'm like, Jaime is going to kill her. He's got her right here. He's going to kill her right where we saw, at the beginning, at the beginning of the season, where Jaime is, it was the end of last season, Jaime, in that very room where he meets Cersei, he had this decisive moment where he decides to, in defiance to Cersei, to leave King's Landing to go fight the dead at Winterfell, right? Cersei, in this decisive moment, ends up sending Bronn to go kill Jaime and Tyrion, who she now sees as traitors to her. Very decisive moment, and their stories diverge, their characters diverge, seems to set Jaime finally on the last part of his redemptive arc, right? He doesn't get it, though. In all the moments that he could have killed Cersei here, he doesn't. Instead, he goes back to the Jaime Lannister that we knew from, like, the previous seasons, where instead of having him, you know, kill Cersei, he ends where he began this entire thing, in Cersei's arms, protecting her, protecting their children. So in a way, it's a full circle thing, but not really the redemptive arc that we were expecting. And again, I just feel like, you know, I understand a little bit of why they're doing it, but I just feel like it's inconsistent with the character development that we've seen Jaime experience up to this point. Seems like the writers decided that while Jaime was sort of flirting with redemption, being a good guy, that he ultimately couldn't get away from his core nature of hatefulness to others, as he says, and his love for Cersei. You know, he tells Brienne this. Personally, I don't buy it. I just think that he was set on this redemptive arc, that the moment that he walked away from Cersei, that was decisive, and that something really shifted irrevocably in that moment for both him and for Cersei. So I don't buy it. I just think he should have killed her. I do think he should have died, but you know, you look at this, I just think that it's also lame that after all of this, 8 seasons of just terrible, terrible Cersei, that the way that they portray her is like weak and vulnerable, and you know, she just loves her children, and she doesn't get the kind of death that you would expect for all the evil and malice and just terrible things that she's done over all of these seasons. She just has the building collapse on her while she's hugging Jaime. Are you kidding me? That is just ridiculous. You know, she should have had a much, much worse and more poetic ending, just as she enjoyed giving to her own enemies, right? Somehow she should have been killed. I was hoping maybe Arya would, you know, end up popping up in the last second and killing her if Jaime wasn't going to do it. So I don't like it. I think it's a terrible end for both of them. I feel like the writers just don't understand those characters, or I get where they're coming from, I guess, but I don't agree. I don't think that they did those characters correctly. Now, the one thing that the writers did finally do right in this episode, character-wise, is Bran, who was not in the episode, in a corner staring creepily at people, saying nothing. So thank you guys for not including Bran creepily in this episode. We'll see if he pops up in the next one. It'll be interesting to see how it all ends, but seems like Jon is going to end up on the Iron Throne. Maybe Tyrion will get it. Those would be my top 2 guesses, but Tyrion will probably die. I'm guessing Jon ends up on the throne after he kills Dany and redeems everything. So we'll see. See you guys next week for a last video to see how this all ends. I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below, and if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Till next week. Bye, guys.